And away we go. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome, one and all, to Coffee Talk. That is right, it is time once again for Coffee Talk Live, where we will be having some discussion about what is going on in the world today. We'll take a look at some clips from the news and have a little bit of dialogue with the people who are able to join us for the live portion. And of course, if you would like to join the live portion, if you're listening somewhere else, you can find us Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, Coffee Talk and Prepper University. That's at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University, as well as at Coffee Talk Chat on X, formerly known as, you guessed it, Twitter, and fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon, unless something changed. Joined today by two felines in the room. I have Little Girl sleeping in the chair behind me, as well as Dusty sleeping on the desk. Dusty sleeping on the desk. You can't see them. And I'll go ahead and say hello to some of the people that have chimed in thus far. I see that D-Lo is here, and he says thumbs up. Yes, please do, if you don't mind, wherever you are watching. Thumbs up or stars or whatever you got. Brian is here. Helter is here. Dragon is here. H12. Urban Angst. Brian thinks my beard is splitting. It's not brushed out. It needs to be brushed out to avoid that separation. Jane is here. It says so much natural news, huge gators in North Carolina and South Carolina coming out way too much. I think hunger is moving out, fish and pollution. Also, we invaded their space. I think about that every time I see roadkill. They were here first. We got in their space, and then we complained about them. But yeah, that could be polluted waterways, or who knows, or other types of construction or things like that. I know that the deer population around here shifted quite a bit when they started pulling up trees back here. So we get ready to jump into the world of the absurd, which is the world we live in, unfortunately, and take a look at our first news clip. And this is the top story, of course, Newsweek article. Biggest surprise of Supreme Court's Trump ruling, according to attorneys. And there's the Supreme Court posing for their class picture. It's a lifetime job, Lifetime job. You're in the Supreme Court forever, unless you quit or drop dead. So on to the article. In an appearance on CNN Tuesday morning, legal analyst and attorney Ellie Hoing, I think that's how you pronounce it, revealed the biggest surprise in Monday's Supreme Court presidential immunity ruling, which I'm sure you've heard by now they ruled in his favor. And so the question begs, what does that mean? The case arose after Trump was indicted on 4 counts of allegedly working to overturn the results of the 2020 election in the run-up to the January 6, 2021 riot at the U.S. Capitol. Notice they're calling it a riot again. I'll point this out. Wording is everything. It was an insurrection all the way up until Tucker Carlson got the video footage. Then they downgraded it to a riot. Trump was facing charges as a front-runner for a Republican presidential nomination. He has pleaded not guilty and repeatedly said he is the victim of a political witch hunt. And I believe that, actually. The case was frozen while the Supreme Court considered the presidential immunity case. In a 6-3 ruling, the Supreme Court ruled that former President Donald Trump has absolute immunity for core presidential acts and presumptive immunity for acts within the outer perimeter of official presidential acts. In addition, it ruled that a president has evidentiary immunity, so prosecutors can't use evidence gathered from Trump's official acts to build a case for alleged crimes committed outside of his presidential role. So on to this attorney. It says, speaking to News Central host Katie Bouldan, Tuesday morning, Honig said he was caught by surprise that the ruling states that a cannot even introduce evidence of any official act as part of a prosecution against the president. Quote, it was no surprise the Supreme Court said that the prosecutors, you cannot charge somebody based on an official act, Honig, excuse me. What caught me by surprise is that they said you can't even introduce as evidence an official act as part of your trial presentation. When you're trying a case as prosecutor, you're often presenting information that is not a crime in and of itself, but it's necessary to tell the story and explain the narrative and explain the context. Yeah, and then try to pull the heartstrings of your jurors or mislead them. A lower court must now determine if the allegations aimed at the former president in the federal case into the events leading up to the January 6th amount to official acts by Trump while he was in the White House. Honig said now special counsel Jack Smith and the Department of Justice election interference indictment against Trump will likely be torn to shreds by the court system. Now in the January 6th case, Jack Smith can't even let the jury know about Donald Trump's communications with the DOJ, which is an essential part of the whole story, Honig told Buldan. So the indictment is going to get torn to shreds by the time the courts are done with it. Well, what did he communicate to the Department of Justice? We've already seen that. What his communication was offering to send the National Guard to help to control the crowd, and the mayor of DC denying that offer, saying that he didn't want any help. I see Cyberjack Sr. is here, as well as Fluke Man. And Urban says because former President Trump has no presidential immunity, then neither do any other past presidents. Not good for the Bushes, the Clintons, the Obamas, and so on. That's correct. If you're going to get one of them, you're going to get all of them. And that's why I had said that them even trying to bring Trump to trial, all these burned up trials that they created for him, it opens Pandora's box anyways to attack future and past presidents for all sorts of things, that they may have been involved with. Monkey said, did you see people are calling Biden King Biden and try to get him to call SEAL Team 6 on Trump? Really? And yet these same people worry about ruling under a dictatorship and advocate for assassination. Yeah, I saw something about that, but I wasn't sure what it was. I wasn't sure what that was. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was a joke. If they did that, that's worse than what we accuse Eastern Bloc European nations of. That's even worse. But essentially, yeah, Pandora's box has already been opened, but if they allowed for that, it would make the situation even worse for past and future presidents. Dragon says nobody's above the law except billionaires and politicians. Yeah, no kidding. But again, the only communication that I'm aware of that took place that was suppressed from the January 6th trials against the quote rioters, some of which have gotten decades-long prison sentences. His communication that, hey, I can send the National, if you guys can't control it, I'll send the National Guard down there to help to, break things up and protect the Capitol. And they were like, no, we got it. And then AOC pretended she was there and she had been gone for hours. My life was in danger. And Monkey says, yeah, no people really want Biden to use SEAL T6 on Trump for this ruling. No, nobody does. That's ridiculous. That doesn't even make sense. He'll mistake it for a Baskin Robbins flavor anyways. You mean ice cream 6? 6 flavors of ice cream? A big cone with 6 a cone with 6 scoops on it, like in a cartoon. And if he drops one, he'll cry because spilled ice cream, it's worse than spilled milk. That's a heartbreaker. It really is. But that's the top story, that there's immunity now or there was immunity, but the Supreme Court just confirmed it, that even if there was something, you can't use it now. So leave it alone. Telling them essentially to back off, and that really kills all of his trials because they can't be picked apart. And as you've seen, everything's been postponed now because now there is an even greater reason to have anything overturned or reevaluated. Rodney says the Democrats are waging lawfare on a continuous basis. There is no downside for them, as they're never held to account. No, they're not. Yeah. And we see this all the time, the slap on the wrist that some of these people get for the crimes that they commit. Mostly it's a misappropriation of funds. We read a lot of those. And the bigger the politician, the more likely they are to get away with it. I can't get away with it. I couldn't get away with not paying a light bill. This is the Supreme Court ruling that I thought was interesting. Even more interesting than that, this one slipped under the radar. USA Today article, Supreme Court throws out multi-billion-dollar settlement with Purdue over opioid crisis. Yep, Supreme Court on Thursday upended a high-profile bankruptcy settlement with the company that made OxyContin, toppling an agreement that shielded the family responsible for the drug's marketing from future damages in exchange for paying a $6 billion opioid victim settlement. The 5-4 decision had sweeping implication for states which intended to use settlement money for drug treatment programs and for the Sackler family, which made its fortune selling a drug that fueled the nation's opioid epidemic. The ruling may also make it more difficult to resolve other high-profile bankruptcies. Justice Neil Gorsuch wrote for the majority that if Congress meant to reshape traditional bankruptcy practice so profoundly, it would have said so directly. Quote, no one has directed us to a statute or case suggesting American courts in the past enjoyed the power in bankruptcy to discharge claims brought by non-debtors against other non-debtors, all without the consent of those affected. Gorsuch wrote for an opinion that included Justices Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, Amy Coney Barrett, and Ketanji Brown Jackson. We all remember Ketanji, but Ketanji doesn't know what gender she is. But Judge Brett Kavanaugh disagreed, saying the ruling ignored victims of the opioid crisis. Today's decision, this is a quote, is wrong on the law and devastating for more than 100,000 opioid victims and their families. Kavanaugh wrote in dissent for Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Sonia Sotomayor and Elena Kagan. Purdue Pharma issued a statement calling the decision heart-crushing, but said it would continue to work towards a settlement. Quote, today's ruling is heart-crushing because it invalidates a settlement supported by nearly all of our creditors, including states, local governments, personal injury victims, schools, and hospitals that would have delivered billions of dollars for victim compensation, opioid crisis abatement, and overdose rescue and addiction treatment medicines, the statement says. Yeah, I'm sure Purdue is crushed. That's damage control, but or PR. But yeah, I'm sure they're absolutely crushed that they've been made exempt by the Supreme Court. Although, to be fair, if people were addicted to opioids, it's because they abused their prescription, most likely anyways. Most of them probably abused their prescription and became addicted, and that's what led to complications. And is it fair to sue a drug company for that? That's like me suing Ford because the speedometer goes up to 100 and I choose to drive really fast until I hit something. You know what I mean? Yeah. I wonder. And Kimberly is here. They say they made it. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. You made it today. So I wonder about that. I don't want to see I don't like seeing a drug company get a pass if they're actually responsible for doing something shady. I don't trust pharmaceutical companies because the products that they put out have way too many side effects. I don't think they're safe. I think that I would, you know, tinfoil hat time. There are those who believe that those side effects are created artificially so that you have to buy even more medications. I don't like that they're allowed to advertise this on TV in America for whatever new drugs. I don't like that they manipulate doctors and pediatricians to convince people to take medications. I don't trust any of that. But if you had a prescription medication that was an opioid and you took way too many of them and messed yourself up, that's not the drug company's fault. But I just think it's interesting that they set this up to basically give the drug company a pass. And I also think it's interesting that, well, naturally, that's just PR. Purdue saying, "Oh, it's heart crushing," because we had a settlement all worked out. I'm sure they really wanted to pay that $6 billion settlement. I'm sure that was at the top of their list. Let's pay that $6 billion settlement. I can't wait. I can't freaking wait. Chomping at the bit to further delve into bankruptcy. No, I don't trust any of these pharmaceutical companies. Helter says nothing honestly changed. Pharmaceuticals have just moved on to the next vulnerable target audience. Indeed. And they keep pumping this stuff out and it isn't safe. And you watch these commercials and they tell you side effects and they also tell you different or show you different side effects in the fine print on the bottom. And it doesn't make any sense. Why do I want to take, let's say I have a skin condition and I get rashes or I get really dry skin. I really would rather have rashy, dry skin than take something that could cause blindness or permanent muscle spasms or cause liver failure or give me a stroke or a heart attack. I mean, serious. Chillin' Dave has joined us here today. And Urban Angst says Purdue just makes it. The distribution channels are what creates the flow of misery and death. Get the dealers from the top to bottom, but politicians protect them, and law enforcement turns a blind eye. Well, that's why you have lobbyists. That's why you have lobbyists. And I see Stuart is here as well. Glad you could make it today. Now, here's something I thought was really interesting, and I wish there was more on this. And we're going to jump to an ABC News article about missing children. Because I guess they rounded a bunch up here just recently. And I'm like, this story's not telling enough. It's not telling enough. I want to know what the hell happened in this story. And one more here. Urban says, corrupt college of physicians and surgeons protect corrupt doctors. Yeah, I don't trust them, especially pediatricians. They have too much power and authority. It's a scary world out there. It's a scary world. And Kimberly says, have you heard you shouldn't have grapefruit if you take meds for high blood pressure? Is it because grapefruit can naturally lower your blood pressure? I'm not sure. I think I've heard that, but I'm not sure why. ABC News article, it says U.S. Marshals rescue 200 missing children in 6 weeks. So U.S. Marshals Service rescued and located 200 missing or endangered children over a 6-week period. Operation We Will Find You Part 2 focused on several hotspot cities such as Phoenix, Arizona, and Miami, Florida, where there were kids missing. Quote, whenever a child is missing, whether we cannot explain how they went missing, whether we think it was a family abduction or a runaway, They are at risk of being in danger and at risk of being trafficked, at risk of being hurt. We need to take it very, very seriously, U.S. Marshal Service Director Ronald Davis told reporters. The Marshals worked with the National Center for Missing and Exploiting Children to help find and locate the children it was tasked with finding. The number of children rescued is still just scratching the surface, according to Davis. With technical assistance from NCMEC, 123 children were removed from dangerous situations and 77 were found in safe locations, according to the agency. Our kids are our most precious asset, he says. We need to make sure that all of them have an opportunity to grow in a safe environment. I think that is our obligation. Davis says the Marshal Service has run the operation 6 times previously to this one, and so far it's located 546 children in 2024, which is a higher number than last year at this time, but lower than the nearly 950 recovered in 2021. It says Phoenix saw the most children rescued over this particular 6-week period. Now, it doesn't tell you. I mean, they found these kids in Phoenix and in Miami. All right. 200 children, 123 of them were in very dangerous situations, apparently. 77, not so much, but a total of 200. And this makes so far 546 they found this year. Where are you finding these kids? Who has them? Is it a structured organization? Is it some kind of trafficking? Is it a network of people holding these kids hostage? Who the hell are these people? Where did you find them? Where did you find them? A couple of comments here really quickly. Fluke Man says, as another YouTuber said, the FDA scientists paid to test new drugs are part-timers and hired by pharmaceutical companies to sign documents to give the drugs a pass or go. I don't know about that, but there's way too much going on for the FDA to properly test anything. It's the same as with the USDA and, certifying and testing meat. There's no way they can keep up with the demand. There's no way. And Jane says, so many kids, are they immigrants or from borders? It doesn't say. Sven says the sheriff in Michigan endorsed Biden and acts like he's fighting child trafficking. Is he? Yeah, he's beating them all the way to Biden's door. Oh, I shouldn't say that. Chillin says grapefruit has compounds that prevent enzymes from metabolizing the medication, which can cause overdose. Okay, that's interesting. I wasn't sure. And, oh, that's somebody talking to someone else. And Chillin says Epstein's hotel for little ones. I want to know more. I don't think that's enough information. Where did you find these kids? And was it, I mean, let's say it was all random. This year, they randomly tracked down. Let's say there's no organization involved. All right. Speculation. This is just for the sake of argument. They randomly located 546 children so far this year from all different, wherever they were staying, and nobody's connected. How come you found them and nobody else? If you can do that, you can find anybody. You can find anybody. In my experience, if it's a runaway, they don't even look for them if they're a teenager. An adolescent, probably. But teenagers, they don't. When I worked for JJA and we called in a runaway, they just put in a report. And the assumption from law enforcement was basically sooner or later they'll screw up and get caught. They'll get arrested somewhere for shoplifting, or they'll get picked up for prostitution or something, and then we'll see they have a warrant, and that's how we'll get them back. They never really looked for them. They didn't try. In my experience, they didn't bother unless the person was very young or there's a suspected kidnapping or something like that. And Just In Case has joined us. And Urban says, what happened to the the pizza story. I won't read the whole thing because that might be a trigger word. I don't know, because that just got swept under the rug, didn't it? It disappeared. That just disappeared. Jane says, "Are they taking these kids to put in foster care to give people caring for them for money?" I mean, I don't know if they're being returned to their families or if they're going in foster care or what. And Helter says, "It's strange. This is not breaking news." Yeah, it's not. It's buried news. It's barely a blip on the radar. I mean, they did a 6-week sting and turned up 200 kids in 2 cities that were quote, missing and exploited children. 123 of them apparently were in dangerous situations, but they don't tell you what that danger was. They don't tell you if this was a network. They don't tell you what these kids were involved in or who. I mean, there's a lot of questions there. There's a lot of questions there. Jane says a friend of theirs, 20 years old, autistic son, ran away and hooked up with immigrant they met online. They met him. They stole his car and credit card, and wow, killed him. That's unfortunate. And Tuck is here. He says, "Hey to everybody." That is pretty sad, Jane. But I think there's a lot more that needs to be known about this story, and they're not telling us anything. At least not in this article, and I'm not seeing much on it. But that's significant. That is significant to me, anyways. Operation "We Will Find You Too," quote. We will find you too. So working with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to track these kids down, which implies that they're not necessarily runaways if it's the NCMEC that's involved with this, looking for these kids. Jane says, "I think kids go to foster parents, get money." Yes, you get paid. If you're fostering a child, you get a check. They pay you to do that. When I was still in Kansas, when I was working for the JJA, I was certified as foster care. I did it a couple of times myself, and it's a damn mess. It's a damn mess because the kids they give you are really screwed up. They show you this list. You go on the website and there's they've got tons and tons and tons of kids that they want to throw into foster care because the states have moved away from orphanages if they can help it. So they put them in group homes that are subsidized, contracted, or they put them in foster care. And you don't find out the bad stuff until you're certified, and they give you a code to put in, and it opens up the last paragraph underneath the child or children's profile that tells you all the dangers. Like, you say, "Oh, that's a cute little girl, 8 years old. Oh, she likes to color," and they tell you all this nice stuff. And then when you can open up the bottom paragraph, highly sexual promiscuous, starts fires, tortures small animals, crazy stuff, like every one of them on the list. And there's only so much of that you can tolerate. They really need to be in a group structured system, but the states don't like the image of an orphanage, so they don't really try to do that so much anymore. They throw it on group homes, again, contracted, so if anything goes wrong, they can blame them. Or they throw them to foster care, and a lot of people take foster kids just to get the check. And they're like, "Well, it's not a very big check." Yeah, but if you get enough foster kids piled up, you can. Because I've heard of people having like 10, 12. If you got enough of them piled up, then yeah, you can make a pretty penny. And that's a shame too. That's a shame too that that's all they are. A check to somebody. A check to somebody. So we are safe. You can hashtag safe from Pride Month. That ought to be a thing. I wonder if that's a thing. Can we coin that? Hashtag safe from Pride Month. Because it is over. It was over as of yesterday, actually, midnight on July 1st. That was the end of that debacle. And something that they don't advertise with that. There's some things that are very disturbing about these parades and about these celebrations that take place is they're very lewd. They're very lewd, very highly sexualized. I was hearing, and I've read some stories on it. I don't have one pulled up, but I do have a video clip I wanted to show. But especially with the men, a lot of public nudity, especially in front of children, touching each other inappropriately. Just in case says they're sure the kids get bounced around a lot. Also sad. Well, yeah, I mean, they're going to get bounced around because if you take little Susie and, she's trying to sneak into your bedroom at night or she's trying to set the bathroom on fire, you're going to get rid of her pretty quick. So, you know what I mean? And also, let me see here. One more from Fluke Man. It says, don't mean to be an ass in today's politics. How do we know those kids were in danger? And authorities probably ignore child endangerment when they really need help. You don't know. Unfortunately, you don't know. You really don't. And that's the sad part. But, and Jane says they had a lady friend, could not have child the natural way. They adopted a child from overseas, went to parent group adopting these children. Some of these parents had nightmare tales. But yeah, adopting from overseas is easier than adopting in the United States. They tell you it's illegal to sell a child, but that's exactly what adoption is. Even if you do it in the U.S., because of all the fees and all the paperwork that you have to pay for and everything else you have to pay for, you're into it for thousands and thousands of dollars. And the state takes that money, and they're basically selling you the child, but they're burying it in red tape and paperwork to make it look like they're not. But that's what it is. It's kind of like plasma donation. Oh, you're donating your time, not your plasma. We're paying you for your time, not the plasma, because it's illegal to sell any part of the human body, including blood or plasma. But go to a plasma center and have a problem where they can't get all of your plasma out to fill the quota, and watch if you get a check. I used to sell plasma. If they can't get their quota, you walk out the door with nothing. But anyways, back to the point here, and I'll pull this video clip up so I can show you. These pride events are very, very highly sexualized because that's the culture. It is a culture, and that culture is centered around their proposed sexual identity, and that's forefront ahead of absolutely everything else. You even see, if you go to a church that panders to this and they wear the rainbow sash, who's first? Your God or your sexual identity? You're wearing a rainbow sash. Speaks for itself. Jane says, I saw that. What's up with the alphabet people? It's like I said, before, human beings have a habit of setting the bar lower and lower. You get into that lifestyle, and whatever you do, eventually it's not enough, and the community will pull you to expose yourself even more. These people are nude at these events. They're having sex publicly. There's kids there. It's horrible. And they fight because they don't like each other. They don't like each other. And, this is something I've talked about a lot because of the interview series I did with the Boston Phoenix back in the early 90s. It's a really screwed up lifestyle. And the people are miserable, which is also part of the reason why they hate each other, because they're all depressed. But I'm going to go ahead and run this. This is how the event goes. Happy Pride Month, everybody. This is what these things look like. You gotta love how everybody stands around and films it with their phone. Some of those people in the bikinis are men, by the way. I don't know if you can tell. Some of those are men, not women in the bikinis. This particular clip does not show any exposed bodies. What you're celebrating? I'm telling you, they hate each other, and they hate us. It's either this or people masturbating in public or something disgusting. Because I've seen this before. And I've seen it going all the way back to the 90s. Happy Pride, everybody. And you get the basic idea here. And I'll cut the sound on it real quick there. You get the basic idea, but this is what you see. You either see this or you see people being sexually deranged in public, doing things that are just disgusting. Pride comes before the fall, as they say. Greg Dayton says these people are really effed up. And Chillin' Dave says, teach your children well. That song was actually the campaign song for Jimmy Carter when he was running for president. Jane says their daughter, 13, saw Britney Spears and Madonna kiss in the newspaper, said, am I supposed to do that? And I told her, no, they did it for attention. Yeah, they did do it for attention. Oh, we've moved on to the dancing and grinding part. I guess it's just as well that I turned the sound off. Urban says, what are we looking at? Pride, ghetto, sorry, is that word allowed? I don't know. That's your pride display in New York. I think this was in New York, correct? Let me double check that. Reduce the image. Yeah, New York City's Washington Square Park Pride Parade, or the party around it. Yeah, that's just great. And Dragon says, notice the phones being shoved in people's faces. Yeah, because everybody's filming it for their Instagram, because everybody thinks that they're going to be the next TikTok star, or that they're going to get 1 million views, they're going to be viral, or some BS. So yeah, everybody's phone goes up. And as I pointed out, and it's hard to tell, some of those women in bikinis are not women. They're dudes. They're dudes. And Jane says sometimes driving around Atlanta, they see shocking stuff. I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised. And Fluke Man says, has anyone heard about the music festival in Glastonbury, United Kingdom? The left wing preaching about illegal immigration has rights, maybe even pollution, carpet bomb the area with their trash. No, I didn't hear anything about that. Helter says people who aren't afraid to get so close to the fight to film someone struggling to get up after being pummeled, but no one dares to stop the fight individually or as a group. Compassion is lost. Well, again, why would you stop and help? Why would you stop and help when you can film it and be a TikTok star or Instagram or wherever the hell you put stuff like this? What are they celebrating? Again, the bar just continues to keep getting set lower and lower, and human beings will crawl under that bar to get even dirtier. And Baki wants to know if we're going to see a video of drunk white folks. I don't know. I mean, there's some white people in that crowd. There's some. As we move around here, Urban wants to know, where are the police? Do they have enough to break that crowd up? You have to get in there with fire hoses. You'd have to go on full riot and fire hose down that crowd, or tear gas it to break them up, to disperse that, send them all home. But then, oh, you're violating their rights because you're homophobic. Because that was pride. That was pride. And I've seen crap like this going all the way back to the early '90s, the pride parades in Boston, and it would. I mean, Jesus, that one year they were throwing bricks, They started out throwing candy, but you don't want a man who's wearing only a thong running around with a bag throwing candy at children in a parade. That's what started it, and somebody got pissed off and threw a brick, and and then all hell broke loose. That was a long time ago. Urban says they should have called Trudeau to send RCMP horses to do what? Help them? We're talking about the Trudeau administration. And Chillin says there's a porta potty I won't use. No, do not. Do not. We've talked about that before, and you can actually find PSAs about it that used to be played in public schools in the 50s and 60s, warning young people to stay away from public restrooms, because there is a game they like to play in toilets that goes back decades. Stay away from public restrooms, especially in areas like that. Especially in areas like that. Do not go into the public restroom under any circumstances. That's how George Michael got caught. You remember George Michael was arrested for soliciting indecent sex. Who remembers that? Way back in the 90s, right? It was in the 90s in California, soliciting. And he said he was set up. That's because the undercover detective knew the game. That's how he was set up. It was a sting. It was not set up. It was a sting operation. He was in there catching proposed pedophiles. Because for those of you who don't know what the hell I'm talking about, and I feel bad for Greg, who said he was 70 here. Greg Dalton said he was 70. You might have heard this. You might even remember those PSAs in the 50s and 60s. They used to play them in high school, in junior high. You go in the stall and you sit with 1 foot at the threshold, because you know how there's a gap under the stall. And someone goes into the next stall, and if they tap your foot, it's a signal, and they do whatever they're going to do in the bathroom. And George Michael did this to this cop, and that's how he got arrested. He tapped him, and then walked into the stall with him. Hey, big boy, how about it? And then he was like, guess what? I'm a cop. You're going to jail. That's what happened, and that's how that sting would normally be done. And it's originally was set up to prevent them from soliciting minors. That was the main reason that kind of a sting used to be done, because that was the primary problem with that whole thing. And Baki says, I think a politician got caught in one of those bathroom scandals. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. But that's how that works without getting too much into it. But those PSAs, they exist on YouTube. You can find them. I don't remember how they're worded, but they are safety PSAs warning, in particular, young boys to avoid public restrooms unless in a group or with an adult, because they're often stalked, and that is something that they still do to this day. Let me see. Urban says, when the Freedom Truckers were in Ottawa, Trudeau ordered a bunch of mounted police to intimidate the crowd using the traditional equine officers, and at least one person was injured. I'm surprised only one person was injured. Those horses can be dangerous if you're not careful. I know. I just turned everybody's stomach with that description, but yeah, that goes on to this day. It's a game that they've been playing for decades, and it used to entrap minors. Again, that's why the police. I don't know if police still do that type of a sting, but that's why it was still being done even in the 90s to protect people in public restrooms. Unfreaking believable. But yeah, you want these people to be scoutmasters and teachers and librarians and pediatricians and whatever else. Seriously. But that's part of their lifestyle. And it is part of the lifestyle. It is part of the lifestyle because, again, I was exposed to it with that interview series for the Boston Phoenix directly, as well as the violence. They can be very violent with one another, incredibly so, because they're all depressed and they all hate everybody. It's really sad, actually. Really very sad. Now, here's an article I thought was pretty interesting. And it has to do with Citigroup and drug cartels. And this is from RegTech Times. Revealed Citigroup's role in drug cartel money laundering scheme. And I think this is a fluff piece. It says recent revelations, as per reports from the Financial Times, have uncovered how drug traffickers associated with the Sinaloa cartel have allegedly utilized Citigroup's ATMs to launder substantial sums of cash. This article delves into the specifics of the case and its broader implications for financial regulations and law enforcement efforts. Okay. In a recently unsettled indictment, it was disclosed that two individuals from California suspected of ties to the Sinaloa cartel deposited nearly $36,000 in small increments at Citigroup ATMs throughout January 2021. The strategy involved making multiple deposits just below the $10,000 threshold that triggers mandatory reporting to the U.S. Treasury. This method, known as structuring, aims to obscure the origins of illegally obtained funds and evade detection. The pattern of deposits, conducted a few $100s at a time with short intervals between each transaction, allowed the traffickers to stay under the radar of automated monitoring systems. By avoiding the $10,000 reporting threshold per transaction, they sought to minimize the risk of alerting authorities to their activities. Such tactics highlight the sophisticated approach taken by criminal organizations to exploit vulnerabilities in financial systems. Now, this is why I think this is a setup. Okay. First, you're acting like you did something by exposing this. Second of all, you're talking about in a year they deposited $36,000. That's hardly cartel worthy. 36,000. So what? And they claiming they found a way because they stayed below the $10,000 threshold that triggers mandatory reporting to the U.S. Treasury through a system of structuring by making small deposits add up. This is just an excuse to monitor every damn deposit you make. Every single thing that they do in their so-called war on drugs that involves controlling cash targets U.S. citizens, not cartels. Everything that they've done with banks, everything they've taken away, getting rid of all denominations above $100. Some of you who are older remember when they had $500 bills, $1,000 bills, $5,000 bills, and so on. You remember when you could deposit or take out as much cash as you wanted without somebody giving you shit. And the amount that you can withdraw before they start giving you paperwork varies from state to state. Everything they've done on their so-called war on drugs, limiting how much cash you can carry with you or transport anywhere or take to the airport. They don't know what you're doing with that money. Maybe I want to buy a car with cash. You know, maybe I'm going to a casino. Mind your damn business. I'm not a drug cartel. Everything they've done is hurt us and done nothing to these cartels. And you're going to sit there and open the door for structuring the monitoring of cash deposits even more closely than you already are. Because in 2021, these two guys who may have a connection to the Sinaloa cartel made 36,000 in deposits in a year. Seriously? That's how that works? Oh, man. Jane says when they were in school, they did not get the sex talk till they were 14, and I was shocked. But yeah, no adolescent needs to know anything about sexuality or politics or social structure or that kind of stuff. Let them be innocent. Let them be children. Stop stealing it from them. Urban says it's not so hard to uncover since many cartel operatives have actual office space in the U.S. side with secretaries and everything. Cartels are basically in plain view in the border towns. As I scroll down here, and Tuck says the war on drugs was anything but. The proof is the lack of defoliant bombing by the USAF. Yeah, I mean, these cartels are billionaires now. Every once in a while they get caught up, but they're billionaires now. They're still making their money. It hasn't stopped them at all. It hasn't stopped them at all. It hasn't done anything of the sort. But it's hindered all of us. It's hobbled us. Younger generations don't realize what's been done or what it's put us through or all this BS about counterfeit money. And I've talked about it before. I've worked with cash. If you touch a counterfeit bill, you count enough money, you touch a counterfeit bill, the instant your fingers touch it, you know something's wrong. Oh, but we have to do all this fancy crap to the bills, and we changed them, and you got to take the stupid pen that you rub on it, and all this other garbage. None of that was necessary. You know a counterfeit bill when you touch it because they can't reproduce the type of paper. It's not paper, it's cotton. It's a form of fabric, actually. But we're supposed to prevent counterfeiting. We're supposed to stop the drug cartels and all these other lies. It's all lies. They did it to control us, not to stop drug trafficking or drug cartels. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. And this is just an excuse. They'll latch on to a story like this and be like, see, this is why we need to track every transaction. No, you need to leave me the hell alone. That's what you need to do. I'm not hurting anybody. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. Unbelievable. Oh, I wanted to talk about this one, but this is going to take a while. I may have to say the story I want to get to, but I may have to save it for tomorrow. I may have to save it for tomorrow because it's going to take a while. I mean, I could get it started here, but let me see. One more thing. This is something that ties in with the whole Biden administration and the debacle that took place on stage. Daily Caller article calling for Kamala Harris to step up. We gone, blow the party up. Delegate warns black women will destroy Democrats if they choose a white man over Kamala Harris. As we talked about yesterday, one of the speculations is that if they do decide to pull Biden, which is not likely to happen, all their options are bad. They don't have any good options. They floated Gavin Newsom. We talked about that yesterday too. Nobody likes Gavin Newsom, and they don't trust him either. And the reason that they would probably want to use someone else instead of Kamala Harris is because they know no one likes her either. But they can't throw her out as vice president, because then they would be admitting that she was only a diversity hire in the first place. And they know if they run her as the presidential candidate, it will fail. If they replace her, they're confessing that she was a diversity hire. If they replace Biden at all, because that also looks like weakness. They're kind of stuck with him unless he has a stroke. So here we are. A delegate for President Joe Biden's re-election effort warned on Monday that black women will abandon the party. You don't know that. If Democrats replace the presumptive nominee with another, quote, white man instead of Vice President Kamala Harris. Biden spoke with a raspy voice and trailed off during the Thursday debate with former President Donald Trump, leading Americans to express concerns about his age and fitness for another 4 years as president. Areva Martin, an attorney and California delegate for Biden for president, said on the Stephen A. Smith show that Democrats should stay the course with the president, and that passing over Harris with a white man would be a deal breaker with black female voters. Quote, first of all, Stephen, who are we agreeing? There is a long list of Democrats: Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer. Martin told host Stephen A. Smith, the list goes on and on. Where is there a consensus? You've got to build a consensus, and there's not a consensus right now. If you pick a white man over Kamala Harris, black women, I can tell you this, we gonna walk away. We gonna blow the party up. Okay, she had to get all snippy and trashy about it. But the sad part is, as arrogant as that sounds, she's right. She is correct. She is correct because people only voted, the people who did vote for Biden in the first place only voted because of Kamala Harris. That is the black vote. And I reflect back. Eric Peter says a lot of rumblings about Michelle Obama. We talked about that yesterday too. Walking back to when he was still running for president. And, you know, I'm in Georgia, and I can pick up the Atlanta radio stations, a lot of black stations, and paraphrasing, because I don't remember the exact quote, but the DJ is like, you know, I can't stand Biden. I wasn't going to vote for him, but now I am because they brought on a sister, because Kamala Harris is up in there. And I'm like, so because she's black, you know nothing about her. Well, and she's not really black, by the way, but that's another story. Because she's of color, now you're going to vote for someone you don't like. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, a lot of people do vote in this way. As far as Eric Peter, yeah, I've questioned, because I think Michelle Obama is the closet back burner Manchurian candidate. She says she doesn't want the job, but if the puppet masters tell her to, she'll take the job. Michelle Obama is not to be trusted. She is not to be trusted. She's as bad as the rest of them. And WCM is here. WCM is here. Yeah, she's as bad as the rest of them. She is not to be trusted at all. But they can't run two females of color on the same ticket. So if they brought Michelle in, she would either have to be vice president, which no one's going to accept, or they would still have to throw out Kamala, which would still showcase that she was indeed a diversity hire. And Jane says, Michelle says that she's not taking the job. She said it so many times, but you can't trust it just because she said that. And Jane says Michelle's not qualified. None of them are. None of them are. But with that, we'll go ahead and start wrapping things up. We're at the top of the hour. Again, you are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and you can find me on YouTube Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time if you wanted to join the live portion. And that is at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Coffee Talk Chat, fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. One last look at little girl sleeping in the chair back there. And I will say thank you to everyone who was able to join us here today. As always, hope you got something